From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The Justice Department names a special counsel for its Hunter Biden inquiry, and surprise, it's the same U.S. attorney who has been investigating the president's son all along. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnists Kim Strassel and Bill McGurn. Happy Friday and welcome to you both. Earlier Friday, Attorney General Merrick Garland held a brief press conference taking no questions, but announcing that he was naming the U.S. Attorney for Delaware, David Weiss, as a special counsel in the Hunter Biden investigation. Here is a piece of Garland's remarks.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to announce the appointment of David Weiss as a special counsel, consistent with the Department of Justice regulations governing such matters. In keeping with those regulations, I have today notified the designated members of each House of Congress of the appointment. In February 2018, after being nominated by the former president and confirmed by the Senate, Mr. Weiss was sworn in as the United States Attorney for the District of Delaware. Mr. Weiss had been a career prosecutor, having served previously in the office for more than a decade. Beginning in 2019, Mr. Weiss, in his capacity as U.S. Attorney and along with federal law enforcement partners, began investigating allegations of certain criminal conduct by, among others, Robert Hunter Biden. That investigation has been recently referenced in federal criminal proceedings in the District of Delaware, and as noted in those proceedings and other public statements by Mr. Weiss's office, that investigation remains ongoing.
Kim, what do you make of this news, and particularly the apparent U-turn here in the Biden administration's position? Recall that there were some IRS whistleblowers who testified that David Weiss had wanted to be named a special counsel and had been blocked. That was disputed, and the Justice Department argued that he had had all of the authority that he needed to conduct this inquiry all along.
Yeah, I think two things are going on here. One is that Weiss has presided over what's now a botched sweetheart plea deal for Hunter Biden. It's important to note that even as Garland was giving that statement, Weiss's prosecutors had filed papers in Delaware court where that Hunter plea deal was being heard by a judge. It was obviously put on hold because the judge had concerns, but also what came out in that hearing last month was that when asked by the judge if Hunter might still face more prosecution, Weiss's prosecutors said yes. This apparently shocked Hunter's defense team. I believe there was probably some sort of wink-nod deal to suggest that Hunter would be in the clear after this. But the problem was that Weiss had publicly said that this investigation was still ongoing. It would have been odd for his prosecutors in court to have said that he was walled off from any other charges if that was the case. So they went to negotiations, and what ended up happening in the court filing today was that Weiss's prosecutors said that they had hit an impasse and that, in fact, Delaware was not the proper venue to bring these charges. They need to go through California or D.C. So we're going to see if the judge in Delaware agrees to this. They essentially asked it be dropped. So this is a consequence because if they are going to be filed in D.C. or in California, Weiss is going to need special counsel authority to do that. But the other reason I believe they're doing this is just they're trying to clean up a political mess. As you know, Kyle, those whistleblowers came out and said that he had, in fact, asked for special counsel status, that he was denied it, that there were Biden appointees who refused to help him file these cases in California and D.C. But Weiss himself disputed that and said that, in fact, he could have always been special counsel. He just hadn't asked for it, but he'd been assured that he could have that status whenever he wanted it. So this is a way for him to now come out and say, look, see, I was telling the truth the whole time. Here I am. I'm special counsel and voila. I don't think it actually solves the question of who was telling the truth back then. He can both be special counsel now and have been denied it in the past. And I'm sure Congress is still going to try to get to these answers. But I would look at this decision both as a practical necessity, given this plea deal has fallen apart, and a politically useful move by Merrick Garland to try to clean up this mess with Weiss and his status.
But as a matter of political cleanup, it does seem like it's not going to give Republicans and critics of this inquiry, critics of this plea deal, the sort of clean break that they they had wanted. And just to remind people of the details of that plea deal, Hunter Biden was going to agree to plead guilty to some minor tax charges and then enter a diversion agreement on gun crimes. And Bill, there were some odd features of that deal that was cut between the Justice Department and Hunter Biden's attorneys, including, as I understand it, one provision saying that if Hunter Biden was not living up to the terms, it would not be merely up to prosecutors to decide that. They would have to go back to the judge to decide that, something that the judge seemed pretty skeptical of and asked whether that would be unconstitutional in her role as a federal judge to be making that kind of a prosecutorial decision about whether the diversion agreement and so forth could continue. And so some of the criticism from Republicans has been that we need a special counsel in order to figure out who is telling the truth here and get to the bottom of what went on in the arrangement that David Weiss was in charge of. And so naming David Weiss as that special counsel does not seem like we're going to get really the answers that people wanted.
Yes, I think we have the worst of both worlds now. It was always a mistake for Republicans to demand a special counsel. We understand why. They see their guys being saddled with these special prosecutors, and they want to inflict it on Democrats. But as Kim alluded to, you point to special counsel, you just bury the issue forever. It takes years to adjudicate. David Weiss has been looking into these things for 5 years. I mean, it's bad on its own because the special prosecutor has no accountability the way other prosecutors have. And it's bad for getting justice here because his own track record, according to the whistleblowers, he compromised, was overruled. Put it this way. If what we heard from the whistleblowers is true, that the investigation was sabotage, that his efforts to charge Hunter Biden was sabotage, what David Weiss should have done is resign and protest, say, I cannot do my job because of the constraints put on me. And that would be honorable to do that. But instead, he stayed. And I think he doesn't have the trust of anyone now. I mean, a special counsel, when they appoint him, is supposed to restore confidence. And I don't think anyone's confident about this. Chuck Grassley, who's one of the people pushing the whistleblowers, just came out again with a statement against his appointment as special counsel here. So I think mostly what the bottom line is going to be, you mentioned it at the outset, to get to the truth and the bottom of the issue. This is just going to delay it, well, at least through the election. And Justice Department is going to be able to say, Congress, there's an ongoing investigation, can't talk to anyone. So I think it prevents us from getting to the truth, which is the important thing. The important thing is not whether Hunter Biden goes to jail or something. It's, first of all, to know what really happened, whether the vice president was compromised, whether our Justice Department is compromised, whether our FBI is compromised. Those are far more important than settling the score with Hunter Biden. And I think it just became a lot more difficult to do that.
Kim, what changes in the powers that he has by being named special counsel? I mean, that allows him to go beyond the District of Delaware. It says that the special counsel regulations say that a special counsel is not subject to the day-to-day supervision of any official of the Justice Department, but this is not an independent counsel. The Attorney General is still in charge of this investigation and responsible for this investigation. The regulations say that special counsel will write a report, so maybe that's one difference, is now we will get a written report out of David Weiss at the end of this. But does it make a real practical difference? And do you agree with Bill that Republicans have maybe made a mistake by asking for this special counsel because now it will get buried in the way that they don't want running up to the 2024 election?
The biggest question is jurisdiction, which, as I noted before, the whistleblower accusation was that The charges that the investigating team had wanted to file included felony charges. And given that they dealt with tax issues, they had to be related to the jurisdiction where Hunter had lived or filed taxes or where they'd been prepared. That's California or Washington, D.C. And yet, according to those whistleblowers, Weiss had not been able to file there because he can only file in Delaware. If he wants to file elsewhere, he has to have the cooperation of the U.S. attorneys in those jurisdictions. According to the whistleblowers, they refused to bring the charges that the team wanted to bring. By the way, these are Biden appointees. So now he can file in any jurisdiction he wants as special counsel. As you note, not subject to day-to-day supervision. Yes, Merrick Garland remains in charge, although even there, under these rules and regulations, if he wants to deny a charge that Weiss brings, he has to provide a pretty good reason for why he would step in to block it. The report, I think that's interesting, although at times, special counsel reports are not made public. They have to submit them to the Attorney General. Congress can certainly demand that it be given to them or made public, but there could be wrangling over that. But, here's the thing that I think changes the most in my mind, what really matters, and it gets to Bill's point and why I agree this was a terrible decision and that Republicans will regret it. He is now going to use his special counsel status to say, I have an ongoing investigation. I am a special counsel. That puts me in a very particular category. You, Congress, are now not going to get any more documents from the Department of Justice. We are not going to allow Mr. Weiss to be available for an interview or for testimony, which is something that had been planned. We're going to keep other people who work for the federal government at the moment who might have had knowledge of the Hunter Biden case, or even those who have retired or left government. We're going to put a gag order on them so they can't come talk to you because this isn't all wrapped up. Now, he may well pursue some of those tax and gun charges more immediately in court because they have been kind of settled for a while and he's going to hit statutes of limitations soon. But everything else that Republicans care about, which is the Hunter Biden shell corporations, the money trail, the question of whether or not there were Foreign Agent Registration Act violations, whether or not Joe Biden was involved. That's all going to be subject to ongoing investigation. It's going to go into a black hole, and probably nobody's going to hear much more about it, at least not from the special counsel, my betting, until after next election is over.